Welcome into Orlando Magic Now. I'm Charles King, and I'm thrilled to be joined by Magic beat writer Josh Robbins today. It's been a couple of weeks since we've seen Josh. He's been on the road with the team. We have him here today for our show, and we're going to talk about the Magic's a week ago and talk about some things to be optimistic, maybe pessimistic about with this team, and then we'll preview next week. So long road trip for you, Josh. 4 games last week. You got to be tired.
Well, look, I'm going to level with you folks. I came into this studio in a terribly grumpy mood, and Charles King's welcome just a few seconds ago actually brightened me up.
Ooh, I don't know. I think I want you in the grumpy mood. That might be more fun.
Well, my emotions don't switch on a dime like that usually. So right now I'm in a good mood. Now,
okay.
Maybe if we have some technical difficulties of which I contribute to, maybe
You'll start
then I'll
throwing stuff. I like it.
Okay.
Let's recap the third week of the season. The Magic go 2-2 with those 4 games. A thrilling win over the Lakers, a solid, probably the best performance of the year, and a win over the Jazz, and then some tough road losses to the Pacers and the Wizards, who the Magic the Wizards have the Magic's number.
Right. Well, the Wizards have beaten them 10 consecutive times in the regular season. And I think it just shows that the Wizards have a dominant player, John Wall. The Magic don't have a single dominant player. They have to do it by committee. And it's a safety net the Wizards have that the Magic don't. So the Magic are going to have to always be close to the top of their game to pull out wins against teams like that.
Looking back at the 2 wins, the Lakers and the Jazz, the Lakers, the most thrilling finish for the home fans of the year. Vucevic hits the buzzer beater for them to win that game. And then the Utah Jazz, at least for 3 quarters, I think you could say it's the best the team has played this season.
That's right. Now let's talk about Vucevic's game winner first. When he ran, he's had a bone bruise in his right knee. It's sore. It remains sore. And yet when he hit that shot over 7'2" Roy Hibbert, he was so ecstatic. He was running down the court like this, and it surprised his teammates to see him run so quickly. Tobias Harris said he didn't think Vucevic could run that quickly. So that might have been the quote of the year, really. And then in their next home game against the Utah Jazz, they put together probably their best first 3 quarters, and then in the 4th quarter they had a lull that was so significant that Scott Skiles actually subbed out 4 guys, brought the starters back in with about 2.5 minutes to go. But that was their best all-around victory.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that the Jazz were without Rudy Gobert and Rodney Hood, 2 pretty important players for them. But still, the Magic did play well overall. So the team is now 5-6 on the year through 11 games. A losing record, but I think there's some reason for optimism, and we'll get into that in just a second. Last year, the team was 4-7 through 11 games, but probably not as quite of a difficult schedule as the team has faced early in the season this year. So I think fans are still trying to make some sense of this team. Is this a good team? Is this a playoff contending team? Is it how much has the team improved under Skiles? So let's talk about maybe some reasons that fans can be optimistic, and then maybe you can channel that grumpy side a little bit and talk about some reasons that fans maybe would be pessimistic. Where should we start? You want to start with optimistic or pessimistic?
You're the boss. You are the boss here. I just do whatever you tell me.
All right, well, let's start negative and finish positive. How about that? All right, we'll start with reasons to be pessimistic. And I think you talked about the Washington game, the Utah game. The Magic have problems, it seems, in the second half, specifically in the 3rd quarter. Magic have had problems finishing in the 4th quarter, but also coming out of halftime with some energy, and that seems to be probably the biggest deal with Scott Skiles right now.
Well, he's upset about it, and he's right to do so. He's so perplexed as to why a team that is so young will come out of halftime and look like they have their feet in cement, which is exactly what happened against the Wizards the other night. I did some research for you and our beloved viewers. So let me read from my envelope here and quote you a statistic that I think is on point. So the Magic begin games in the 1st quarter by shooting 51%. They've made 51% of all their baskets in the 1st quarter. Follow me so far? All right, good. So, but in the 3rd quarter, the Magic make just 41% of their shots. And I'm not even mentioning the defensive numbers, which tend to be woeful in the 3rd quarter. So in the 1st quarter, they are the very best offensive team as measured by shot percentage, accuracy. In the 3rd quarter, they are 28th out of 30 teams. And Skiles and his coaches are so confused by what they're seeing. They actually went to their team today during a film session and said, well, guys, put your coaching hats on. What's the problem here? What's going on with you guys? Because they don't have an answer for themselves.
There's no theories?
Well, there are a bunch of theories, and the theory that the players came up with today was, well, our focus isn't very good in the third quarter. Well, I'm curious why their focus isn't so
The
good.
halftime speeches are passionate enough.
I don't, these are professionals.
Sure.
And they shouldn't require a halftime speech, and Skiles doesn't give them halftime speeches. My opinion is that this is a team that has developed such awful habits over 3 years, the first 2 of which they were expected to lose, that it's very difficult for them, or for any team that has gone through that, to suddenly shift it into gears. Like you're telling me, well, be grumpy. Well, if I'm naturally a happy person, as I am, I can't suddenly be grumpy now, can I?
Yeah.
Unless we have technical difficulties, in which I could snap like that. But in the Magic's case, this is what the team is fighting against. This is what the coaching staff is trying to correct, these bad habits that have developed over 3 years. And this is the price you pay for losing, and losing consistently.
Throw an optimistic point into our pessimism here with this topic, in that this seems like something that's pretty easy to correct. It seems like an effort or energy issue that once you become more aware of it, it should be easier to resolve than a deeper issue that we'll get into maybe with some shooting problems.
Well, you would think so, but if you were to come up to me as I'm huffing and puffing on deadline and say, Josh, you got to write better than you did for first edition. You got to step it up for Metro. Well, I could either go one or two ways. I could either take that and improve, or I could try so hard that it's causing problems. And this is a team that seemingly could go either way for a lot of reasons. One, again, the losing, you pay an emotional price over the course of 3 years. Now, I think by the end of the season they will have snapped out of that rut, but it's not something that can shift right away. But talking about specifics now, Jason Smith missed over a week's worth of games because of a sore left knee. He practiced today, so he should help the bench. C.J. Watson, sore left calf, still is not practicing, so they could use him. So if they can get both Smith and Watson on the floor, that will certainly help their bench in the third quarter, at least the second halves of the third quarter, not necessarily the start of the third quarter.
Since you mentioned injuries, let's you talk about Smith and Watson. What's the latest on Victor Oladipo?
He was at the Magic's practice facility today. He's going through the concussion protocol. As a matter of fact, the concussion protocol started the moment they diagnosed concussion symptoms. So he went to a doctor the next day. He has to pass a series of NBA-mandated tests, like riding a stationary bike, like doing agility drills, like eventually, and this is right at the end here, returning to practice. But you can't go to the next step until you're completely asymptomatic, until you don't have any more symptoms. So it's very difficult to determine when he'll be ready to play again. I don't think he'll be ready to play Wednesday against the Sacramento Kings. I think it's more likely that he plays maybe on Friday, but that is not even close to a given. And I think Magic fans and people in general need to understand just how difficult it is to predict how concussions heal.
Yeah, very open-ended. You've seen a wide variety of results over the years,
right,
where some players would be out for months. All right, so let's talk about some other reasons to be a little pessimistic about the team. One of the problems I think that the Magic are experiencing in the third quarters, a tendency not to move the ball as swiftly on offense, over-dribbling, and creating a stale offense with bad shots late in the shot clock.
Well, Coach King, you're exactly right. That is a problem, and this is the offense that Scott Skiles is trying to avoid, one where players go one-on-one and try to create entirely by themselves. He wants an offense that doesn't rely on dribbling. He wants the pass to really dictate how the offense works. Move the ball through passing rather than over dribbling, rather than aimless dribbling, which really, to some degree, is what Elfrid Payton did all of last year. So this is a huge adjustment for Elfrid Payton. He wants his players to cut with speed. He wants his players to screen like offensive linemen in the NFL. And these are big adjustments, and again, because they are playing now for a coach who is asking completely different things, it's a huge adjustment, and when things get tough in a game, they are reverting to what they did in past years, and this is what the Magic have to fight through. This is the problem that they face, and it's going to take good old-fashioned elbow grease to turn that corner on a permanent basis.
And I think another thing that fans have noticed with this team is really an inability to finish around the rim, and the team is really not getting to the free throw line at a high rate.
Yes. I mean, I can't put it any better myself. I mean, this is the reason why you're hosting this show, because you can make these points with minimal words.
As long as I type it out and read it, I'm okay.
Well, you see, I'm only good if I type something out. That's the only time I make any sense. But I did do some research, again, for our beloved viewers. The Magic are 28th out of 30 teams in making shots within the restricted area, that little circle that's underneath the hoop. They've only made 54% of their attempts. It's a problem, and it has been a problem for a couple years. And the question is, sometimes a player simply is good at this, like a Tony Parker came into the league from France with an innate ability to do this. Rod Strickland, one of the greatest finishers in the game. Some players come into the league as bad finishers and never get better. Some get better. That's the question for the Magic now. Can they actually work on this and develop these skills and get better? Right now, they haven't. I mean, let's not mince words here.
And the Lakers game in specific was a terrible game. Amazing that they were able to beat the Lakers in that game, considering the dreadful percentage they shot in the paint that game in particular.
Yeah, they're getting some shots there, some good shots, and they are missing these easy bunnies. I mean, these easy shots they should make. And, one thing leads to another with a young team, that you miss a close-range shot, that, you lose a little confidence. And with a team that has lost 59, 62 games over the last, each year for 3 consecutive years, your confidence is a fragile thing. And their confidence is getting better, but it's like a roller coaster, and it can change within games, and it doesn't help when you're missing shots that you should make.
Let's shift gears now. Let's talk about some reasons that the fans can feel optimistic now. I think the number one thing you want to point to is the improvement on defense. Definitely the energy that is being used, and just chasing shooters off, contesting shots. This team has made a pretty big leap. It's early in the year. It's only 11 games, but we've made a pretty big leap as far as defensive efficiency in the season so far.
Well, the difference is dramatic, and again, just like we can't sugarcoat the problems with finishing at the rim, we can't deny that the Magic are much better defensively. You mentioned closing out on three-point shooters. Next time you watch a game, folks, watch how the Magic are at least attempting to close out on three-point shooters, and try and think back to the previous 3 seasons, how much of a disaster that was. Just look at the difference in effort. And this is translating, not just that, but the whole defense, the whole defensive scheme, and then the focus on defense actually is paying dividends. So now the Magic, as of Monday, rank 6th in the league in field goal percentage defense. They rank 12th in defensive rating. Last year, they were right near in the bottom 5 in both categories.
25th in efficiency last year.
Yes, 25th in efficiency last year. What were they in field goal percentage?
I don't have
28.
that number.
I think they were 28.
Those are huge leaps.
Those are huge leaps, and those should actually remain at the minimum. Those should stay the same, or definitely improve once they faced Washington twice. They faced the Oklahoma City Thunder. They faced the Toronto Raptors. All good offensive teams, and they should get better. As they play awful teams, which are coming up, and get more used to this system. Again, they are adjusting. They're playing for a coach who's asking completely different things than Jacques Vaughn asked. Not necessarily James Borrego, but Jacques Vaughn. And this is an adjustment period, and they should get better. They should be better a month from now. You can hear my cold here. 2 months from now, 3 months from now. And could somebody please help me get some Hall's cough drops? It's destroying the show.
It's a very specific request.
Anything.
If we can get on that.
May I go to well, I won't mention the name of a pharmacy, but would you mind if I interrupt the show?
Right now, I think if you could hold out for maybe 15 more minutes, that would be critical, because I can't do this by myself.
I'm trying to stifle this cough,
I'll do some talking for a couple of seconds here, and then you can catch your breath. All right, so let's talk about at least the Magic. It is hard to point to the fact that the team has a losing record and be optimistic about that. But as we've said before, it's a very challenging schedule. The Magic are 5-6. They have taken really good teams in losses to overtime, with the exception of 2 or 3 games where they seem to fall apart in the second half. I think think if you had told most Magic fans before the year that they could emerge with this record, I think most would be at least satisfied or optimistic about the future.
Probably. I can't speak to what hundreds or
Is this
thousands
better
of
than
people
you thought the Magic would be at this
I can
point?
speak to what
Okay.
I thought.
Okay.
And I thought that they would be, that they'd emerge from their first 8 games with maybe 2 wins.
Mm-hmm.
And for them to be 5-6 after 11 games, that should be a positive. Now, they should have won a couple of those games in there, too. I don't believe in moral victories, and neither does their coach. Unfortunately, I think the players have got to get to the point where they no longer believe in moral victories. Again, this is one of the bad habits they've fallen into. So at 5-6 after 11 games, it could have been a heck of a lot worse for them. And I think it is something to build on. And this week, we're going to get to this week's games, right?
Eventually.
Okay,
Towards the end.
so Wednesday night, they play the Minnesota Timberwolves. That's a game the Magic should win. Saturday, they face the Sacramento Kings, a team. Talk about a team that's up and down. Tough to predict, but that is a game at home the Magic should win. They should emerge from their next 2 games above 500.
And a chance to get some rest. I mean, the Magic have been on the road a lot, playing a lot of games back-to-backs, and only to have 2 games this week should provide the players an opportunity to be fresh for the games. And we're going to talk about both of those games in detail in just a minute, but let's keep this theme going, this optimistic, pessimistic, maybe pros and cons, plus and minus theme, and let's apply it to some of the players thus far in the season. And let's first talk about some players that maybe have exceeded expectations or are playing well for the team at this point. And I think we have to begin with Evan Fournier. I said it in the show a couple of weeks ago. If you come into the season wondering this young team who is going to make the biggest leap, and I think people were thinking, will it be Oladipo? Will it be Harris? Will it be Payton? I don't think a lot of people were thinking that Evan Fournier would be the player that would make the biggest leap from last year to this year, but he's been really good, really gritty, a fiery guy that this team needs.
You've made all my points for me. I mean, you're right. He's arguably the most improved player on the team and could eventually merit some most improved player consideration if he were to continue on this path. He leads the team in points per game, almost 19 points. He's one of their best 3-point shooters. He is their best finisher around the rim. And probably most important, he's been their second best defender right behind Victor Oladipo.
In some of the big games, he's guarded James Harden, Paul George. He's gotten the tough assignment, leading the team in scoring and getting the toughest assignment on defense a lot of nights.
Yeah, and he's 6'7", but he's a natural shooting guard. It's like asking me to be Scott Maxwell. It's not something that I'm used to. So he's guarding threes. He's been guarding threes for the most part. Now he's subbing for Oladipo at the 2, but the grit and the toughness that he has shown guarding these taller, stronger, in some cases faster, more rugged players hasn't been lost on his coach. I mean, he's the second best defender on the team, and then there's a big gap between Fournier and the third best defender, whoever that is. So, and then his mental toughness. I mean, we're joking around about my cold, although it shouldn't be a joke to you. Thanks for your sympathy, by the way.
I'm going to wash my hands thoroughly when we're done.
Well, you should. Being serious, the attacks in France occurred on Friday, and Fournier learns about them about 90 minutes before tip-off, and he's worried about his family, and yet he goes out. Somehow he remained a professional. He goes out, and he plays a great game. He was the best player on the floor, I think 21 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. Then the next night, he scored 2 of the first 4 baskets. After the pregame, they actually brought out the French flag. They played the French national anthem. They had a moment of silence. All these gestures, which he was very much moved by, and yet, remarkably, he was able to be at the top of his game at the start of the game. That's the kind of toughness that he has, which I don't think a lot of fans realize, and I'm not even sure I fully realized until this week. And
he has been very vocal, I think, in locker rooms when you hear Evan Fournier talk post-game. I would consider him among the most affected players by losses. He seems to take losses harder, takes them almost personal, and seems maybe as if he's taken a leadership role with this team. I think a lot of people would think of Harris, Oladipo as leaders, but now I think Fournier has come into a leadership role, and I think maybe this team has leaned on him a little bit to be a vocal leader this year as well.
Perhaps. I think the whole leadership issue is actually an issue for the Magic. They don't have a natural leader per se. You and I could point to 10 teams where there's a dominant player who's also the dominant leader, who, or it might be a veteran whose resume is so strong that he's the unquestioned leader in the locker room, like say David West was last year for the Indiana Pacers.
Right.
Who is that for the Magic? Now, their three captains this year are Channing Frye, Tobias Harris, Victor Oladipo, and I think Harris and Oladipo are growing in that area, but it doesn't matter what a team vote is. It depends on whether your actions are consistently high level, and whether your intentions are always high level, and whether you're a good teammate. I think all the current captains have that ability, but it's something they have to prove, and I think it's something the rest of the roster, including Fournier, have to prove. I don't think the leadership issue will be determined until at least halfway through the season, if by then. And then if the Magic don't have a leader, well, then maybe they are going to have to go trade for one. But you're right, this is a positive step, and I think not only Fournier, but I think Victor has taken steps with the quality of his defense. I mean, he takes more punishment on defense than anyone else on the team. That's how you earn respect. Tobias Harris, in the seasons before this, has earned criticism, rightfully so, for sometimes being a black hole on offense where he wouldn't necessarily pass it. Well, this year he's been far more unselfish. I think that's a positive sign. And then Channing Frye, the third elected captain, his effort has been much greater than it was last year, and he's also been put in the right places. But all those are actually positive signs.
Well, let's talk about Channing Frye as we're talking about some players that have been pretty good lately. And Frye got a handful of DMPs early in the year as the team's second highest player, if I'm correct, second or third highest paid player. I think a lot of people felt like Frye's season last year was a disappointment, and then not getting playing time this year until there were some injuries. But he's responded well, hit some big shots against the Lakers, and then was thrust into the starting role against the Wizards.
Well, you're right, and as I look at my trusty cheat sheet here, he's hitting 40% of his threes, and even if he doesn't get the ball on offense, he does create space. But I think the biggest difference in his play is defense. The difference between last year and this year is night and day. The scheme fits what he can do better, and he's been put into places within that scheme where he can be effective. There's something to be said for that. And last year he and Vucevic together were a disaster, the worst two-man combination of anyone who played, of any two-man combination that really played significant minutes. So far, they're doing pretty well. And his effort has been strong. I don't see how he rightly was the subject of fans' disappointment last year, not necessarily because of his effort, but just because he wasn't producing on defense. This year, he's producing on defense. That's improvement.
Yeah, unquestionability to shoot the three. One of the better players in the league at his height and position to shoot the three-point shot. A couple other players quickly that have been pretty good so far this year. Shabazz Napier, Dwayne Dedmon. Dedmon comes in Vucevic's absence. The team wins 2 straight games at that point. Napier with a big game career high against the Lakers. Napier's playing time has been all over the place. Some games he'll play a lot, some games he won't play at all, but gives the Magic a different look at the point guard position, giving them a scorer at that position, which they don't really get, at least from the perimeter with Elfrid Payton.
Well, your diagnosis is exactly correct. I don't even know why you have me here. I wish you would take me off set and let me cough a few times, because I think I'm turning green or purple or whatever. I'm looking to you for a timeout. I'm wondering where our commercial sponsors are. But all true, by the way.
Maybe that'll come later in the season as well.
Well, I need a timeout here. I need a cough button. But with regard to Shabazz Napier, exactly right. I mean, he is hitting from the perimeter, although Elfrid Payton's shooting has improved, particularly from the free throw line. Mm-hmm. They need someone in the backcourt who can hit long-range shots, and Napier, his three-point shooting is around 40%. he is hitting big shots, and he's playing well on defense. Again, the knock on him was that he's barely 6'1", too slight to fight through screens, and yet he's making that effort. And Scott Skiles has said multiple times, if there's any single player on the roster who has a reason to complain about his playing time, although he has not complained about his playing time, if he had wanted to, well, Napier has a good rationale. He actually has a good track record to argue for more playing time, and Scott Skiles is going to put him on the floor more often.
And Dedmon, a player that a couple years ago was fighting to make the roster, and now has proven himself to be a solid NBA backup center.
Exactly. I mean, he's their best shot blocker, best natural shot blocker. He's arguably their most intimidating defender. And when he's out there, the defense is better. The question is, can he avoid fouls? Can he be productive on offense? Right now,
can he avoid taking out Oladipo as well?
Well, he's done it twice now, and both times by accident. Last year in training camp, he attempted to block a shot. Elbow came right down on Oladipo's upper cheekbone, fractured multiple bones. An accident, okay? And then the other night was even greater accident. I'm not even sure Dedmon knew where he was on the court, except that the ball was loose, and he was starting to crouch to go get it. But then Victor Oladipo, playing with reckless abandon, as he always does, collided right into Dedmon's shoulder, and unfortunately for Victor and for the Magic, suffered a concussion.
Let's talk about some players now. I hate to go into the negative stuff, but let's talk about some players that maybe, I don't know if we want to say aren't living up to expectations, but maybe aren't playing to the top of their potential. Let's put it that way. And I think the player that struggled the most this year is Elfrid Payton. There's certainly some positives. You look at, he's shooting 35% from three, even though on minimal attempts. He's shooting 81% from the line, which is incredibly surprising. He shot 55% last year. I think working on his form has helped him in these free throw situations and even spot up maybe corner threes. But he's struggling to make pull-up jumpers. He's struggling to finish at the rim. He's shooting 34% from the field this year.
Well, that is a problem, and you're correct to point out the positives, which is a free throw shoot, which is a major positive. And then the major negative is his shooting from pretty much everywhere else. There's no tougher position to play in the NBA than point guard. You not only know exactly what you have to do, you have to know what all four of your teammates are going to do. And Elfrid is a lot like a quarterback who, in the NFL, who made a big adjustment as a rookie, improved every month, as he did, finished fourth in the rookie voting, and then they changed coaches. It's like an NFL quarterback who now suddenly has to learn an entirely new offensive system. And this is one of the major adjustments that he has to make. This is emblematic of, this is almost team adjustment. The Magic have got to adjust to a new coach, a new system, both offense and defense. And in terms of the offense, no one has a bigger adjustment than Elfrid Payton. And his free throw shooting is improved. But part of this offense is to have a point guard who can knock down perimeter shots. Now he's taking more shots. He's attempting more shots. That is a positive.
But he doesn't seem confident. A lot of times pulling up from mid-range, you almost sense a hesitation before he pulls up, like he's not confident in that shot at all.
Correct, and I think that will build with time. But I think right now the bigger concern is, when will he become fully confident in the system itself? And I see signs that he is working on that. But the other night in Washington, the Wizards' ball pressure on the perimeter disrupted the entire Magic offense. And when you get disrupted, when things are uncomfortable, you revert to what you do best. And in terms of what Elfrid does best, it is trying to orchestrate the offense on your own, trying to dribble through a defense, kind of like the way a clownfish dribbles through sea anemones there. Terrible example, but you see where I'm going for. He's trying to penetrate into the defense, find seams in the defense, and then dish off to teammates. He does that very well. The only problem is that's not what the Magic's current read and react offense is designed to do. And so I think he will get better as the season goes on, but I think there are going to be a lot of ebbs and flows before he gets to that point.
We're going to talk about this week's games in just a minute. Before we do that, let's talk about a couple of other players that have been a little disappointing this year. Victor Oladipo, just in his field goal percentage, struggling to shoot the ball 38% from the field, 27% from three, also having trouble finishing at the rim and not getting to the line. If you look at Oladipo over the course of his career, averaging more than 4 free throw attempts per game, which I guess for a scoring guard isn't a high number anyways, but this year, getting to the line, just 2 free throw attempts per game.
It's a concern. No other way to sugarcoat it.
And when you pair that with Payton in the starting backcourt,
that too is a concern, and that's one of the reasons why C.J. Watson is or Shabazz Napier are out there in the backcourt receiving playing time. Mm-hmm. That said, it's a shame that Victor's hurt because these numbers tend to improve the more looks you have. I mean, you might regret if you start off really hot, you'll regress to the mean. If you start off really poorly, you'll go toward the mean. You'll improve. So this concussion, aside from being bad for his health, which is really the most important issue, it interrupts any immediate attempt he could have to raise those numbers and to get into a flow. And now he will be out of rhythm when he comes back to the court, whenever that is. It's a concern. Now, that said, defensively, he's been superb. Skiles says that he's playing at an all-defensive team level, which is saying something because in this defensive system, the guards aren't encouraged to try and go around screens. They're almost encouraged to go through the screens. And as I said before, no one has absorbed more punishment that way than Victor has. That's not where his concussion was suffered, but certainly his effort is there, although his shooting hasn't been.
Wouldn't be a Orlando Magic Now show if we didn't talk about Mario Hezonja. We have to shoehorn him into the show somehow. And it's hard to call a rookie, especially someone of his age, a disappointment so far this season, but I think fans might be disappointed that he's only playing 14 minutes per game. You saw the big summer league dunk and some athleticism with him as a player. I think there's some hopes that he could have more of an impact, even though it is very early on in the season. Shooting 38% from three. He hasn't missed a free throw yet this year, but I think people would point to him struggling with the physicality of the game, especially off the dribble, and maybe not ready for the NBA just yet in terms of his ability to play defense against some of the better perimeter players in the league.
Well, I'm not sure. He's got a ways to go, no question about that, Charles. And this is an adjustment the fans have to make. For 3 years, rookies and undrafted free agents came into Orlando and just played. No matter how awful they were, they almost always played. And they could repeat a mistake, and partly because of the franchise's MO at the time, and partly because the franchise had no depth on its bench, they would just play. I mean, you saw it with Mo Harkless, you saw it with Kyle Quinn. We can go all down the list. DeQuan Jones, I mean, we can go down the list. This is an entirely new way of thinking where, just in terms of philosophy, Scott Skiles is much more like a Stan Van Gundy, more like a Steve Clifford, more like a Doc Rivers in the sense that you earn your playing time, and if you're not ready to play, you're not going to play. And if you're a veteran, you're not going to play. If you're not producing, if you're a rookie, you have to know what to do before you get on the court. Now, there's a misperception about Skiles that he won't play rookies. That's completely false. What he's not going to do is play someone who is having problems on defense, who makes repeated mistakes. Now, Hezonja, I think, will be better in time. I do. But I think that he suffered for playing for his home country in the European tournament, Eurobasket 2015. I get why you want to play. I don't think he really had a choice. I mean, he couldn't live with himself if he didn't play for his country. But he got here in mid-September, toward late September, and he lost several key weeks there that would have helped him adjust a little bit more. Now, I wouldn't say the situation is anywhere near as dire as you've described it. I mean, I don't think 14 and a half minutes is anything so bad, and I think he's shown a lot of glimmers of very good things, but this is the new normal for the Magic, that if you have continued problems on defense, as was typified by his defense on an inbounds play against the Wizards, where he failed to guard a guy and the guy got an immediate reverse layup, you're not going to play. And I think he is making an effort to make those improvements, and I think that within time, some of this will start to click.
Okay, so let's jump into this week's games. Only two, and both of the games are at home. Wednesday, the Magic will play the Minnesota Timberwolves, a team much like the Magic, young and a little up and down. 4-6 on the season, 4-1 on the road this year, but the Timberwolves have lost 4 in a row.
Right, and this is a team that was rocked by the death of its president and head coach, Flip Saunders, at the start of the year. Started off the season well, especially on the defensive end. They've got two of the brightest young talents in the league. You'd almost want to swap out that roster for almost any other young roster in the league. Karl Anthony Towns, the #1 overall pick this past year, and then Andrew Wiggins, the #1 overall pick.
They have so many #1 picks, they just gave one away.
Well, Anthony Bennett, but Karl Anthony Towns is going to be a great player. He's only 19 years old. Andrew Wiggins is on the road to becoming an all-star player. They have lost 4 straight. They are going to be coming off a game in Miami. Still, that is a game the Magic should win. The Magic are going to be well-rested, will not have played since that's a game the Magic need to win. There's no way to sugarcoat it. They've got to win that game if they're going to make the progress they want to make.
Wiggins really has made a jump, averaging 20 points a game, a couple of 30-point efforts. Karl Anthony Towns averaging 15 and 10. And we saw the Kobe Bryant tour come through town last week. Even though we didn't play, probably the last chance for fans to see Kobe Bryant come into Amway, and maybe the last chance for fans to see Kevin Garnett as a player when he comes as a member of the Timberwolves this week.
Interesting. I don't understand what the Wolves are really doing there. He wanted to come back to play for Flip. They have a strong bond, and Sam Mitchell, he's got a strong bond with Sam Mitchell. And he is starting, but he's playing so sparingly. I really question the benefit that they are getting from having him out there. But the
thought process is the benefit in the locker room, I think.
Yes, well, undoubtedly. But look, that's nice, okay. but I think Kevin Garnett could give them more on the court than he's currently giving them. And
you talk about the leadership vacuum, maybe with the Magic. I mean, here's a young team in Minnesota that has Kevin Garnett in the locker room.
And what would the Magic give to have someone who could lead by example? I get it, but if I were watching the Timberwolves, I'd want to see him play more.
So on Saturday, the Magic play the Kings. The Kings are 4-7 on the year, but have won 3 straight. Most of that has to do with DeMarcus Cousins, who was out for a short stretch, came back averaging 36 points per game in the last 3 games since returning. And he's added the 3-point shot. I mean, he's a very tough player to defend, but shooting the 3 at 44% on the year, taking 4 threes per game for a center, that is incredibly hard to guard a guy that finishes so well around the basket that now has added a 3-point shot to his game. And we saw the Magic struggle to defend Humphries against the Wizards shooting the 3 the other night. This could be a problem.
Well, DeMarcus Cousins, under any circumstances, is a problem.
Sure.
He is so talented. He's the most talented center in the game. More than Marc Gasol, more than anyone else, more than Karl Anthony Towns. This is someone who has so much talent. If he could only get back to playing for a coach who he fully trusts, and it's a shame that they ever fired Mike Malone.
This is the NBA's reality show, the Sacramento Kings, with Rajon Rondo, DeMarcus Cousins, and the conflicts going on with the coach George Karl, the management, the team owner. It seems like there's something in the NBA news every week about this.
It all stems from the owner, Vivek Ranadive, who deserves tremendous credit for keeping the team in Sacramento. But now, let's be honest. Let's talk plainly. There's not a more dysfunctional team in the league, and it's because of the owner. It's because of the owner who insisted on firing Mike Malone. It's because of the owner who hired an inexperienced lead executive, Vlade Divac, who is, by all accounts, a wonderful human being, but he's inexperienced. He's not yet ready to be essentially the general manager of the team. And if you're going to make these choices, Vivek Ranadive thought that you have to play up tempo at all times because it worked for his, I believe it was his daughter's middle school age team. That if you
just
press,
think about what you're saying, how ridiculous that is.
If you press a 6th or 7th grade team, you can make up for a lot of problems. Well, okay, it doesn't work in the NBA, and it just goes to show that you can do something wonderful as an owner, in this case, keeping the team in Sacramento. And yet you can also create an entire situation full of dysfunction. And dysfunction is not a situation that any player really thrives in. I mean, look at the LA Clippers with Donald Sterling, the biggest disgrace the NBA has had in decades. Vivek Ranadive is a good person. He's not Donald Sterling, but he's not doing his players or the fans of Sacramento any good. Back to the game on Saturday, however, this is a game the Magic should win, but it's a game they could easily lose because DeMarcus Cousins is the most talented center in the league. And if he's on his game, not just the Magic, but 28 other teams besides the Magic would have problems containing that guy.
There were some discussions in the summer about the Magic being involved in a trade with the Kings, the Los Angeles Lakers. Perhaps Cousins goes to the Lakers in that deal. And then Brian Schmitz last week wrote about maybe the Magic should be interested in some discussions with the Sacramento Kings about Cousins, even though Cousins is notorious for, being having a bad temper and doesn't necessarily fit, I think, what the Magic have looked for in players in the past. Do you have any opinions on whether or not the Magic would want to be in discussions for Cousins?
I'll look right into the camera and tell you exactly what's going to happen, and if I'm wrong, then just remember what I said. There is 0% chance the Magic will ever trade for DeMarcus Cousins. 0. Will not happen. Just will never occur. Now, should they consider it? You could debate it. I mean, that's a fair question to debate. But I can tell you right now, there is no chance the Magic would ever trade for DeMarcus Cousins. So it's a moot point, really. It does beg a question, though. Can any professional team or high-level college team win with a bunch of choir boys? Are you, not that they can't be successful, but are you shutting yourself off to a whole other group of people who could actually help you on the court? That's a fair question to ask, but and the Magic really have 14 guys in the locker room who from everything I see, are good people.
Yeah.
They're not going to trade for DeMarcus Cousins.
Crushing dreams, Josh.
Yeah.
You hear crushed dreams of Magic fans that were maybe keeping the door open to that being a possibility. So the Magic play the Timberwolves on Wednesday, play the Sacramento Kings on Saturday. Just 2 games for the Magic. Both are at home. Last chance to see Kevin Garnett on Wednesday, and a chance to see one of the NBA's best centers, or the best center, probably one of the best players overall, in DeMarcus Cousins this weekend. So thanks, Josh, for taking the time. We cut through another episode of Orlando Magic Now. We're here live on OrlandoSentinel.com every Monday afternoon. Thanks for watching. You get a cough drop now?
I just want to call.